welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on Dig Live. I wanted to start off just on the get-go is just understanding a little bit about you as a person. So you're a detectorist, your wife is a detectorist too. How long have you been doing this? And what was really that point where you thought, you know what, I'm going to share my thoughts with the world? What happened?
Mhm. Well, it was a gradual process. I mean, when I was a kid, I got a metal detector for Christmas, like way back in 1986.
Oh, I know
And
that one.
yeah, yeah. And then I got my future wife at the time. We were dating at the time. I got her involved in the hobby, and she fell in love with the hobby too. As I put it recently, she has the bug, but I have the disease. So that means that I'm, I am always absolutely addicted to the hobby, and she just goes when she can. But she
Yeah.
really enjoys it, and we enjoy getting out together. I'd written some articles for various magazines in the U.S. For some years, starting in about 2008 or 2009. And then I gradually started thinking, well, the UK has this great series of books, finds identified, and we don't have anything like that over here in the States. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had something for North American
Mm.
relics, just from the time periods that we have here, and we could delve into things like 19th century relics, which, aside from American Civil War relics and buttons and things like that, nobody's ever thought to do.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. It weaves quite well with over in the UK. We've got the Finds Identified series, which is produced by people responsible for the Portable Antiquities Scheme. That book is a little bit like showing you the masterpiece example or the best case example of that specific object. From the Vikings in Newfoundland to sort of Spanish colonial relics in the Southwest, America's history is very diverse, isn't it? How does your book weave together those regional stories? And do you have specific pages dedicated to each topic, or is it more sort of a regional hash? What have we got in that?
Yeah, so this book is really through the lens of Louisiana, which itself is its own kind of microcosm of some of the melting pot that we have here of cultures and empires in the past.
Mm,
And so we had a lot of, the New Orleans itself was essentially, I think I wrote in the book, a Caribbean city in the way it looked, but wore the colonial trappings of empires of Spain and France throughout its history. And then, of course, once we had the influx of northern planter economy from buying out all of the land here and changing various regulations with regards to persons of color. We saw a big change here in Louisiana in the early to mid 1800s.
yeah,
So the book would essentially then function as a relic identification guide.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
So it's like a relic Bible, if I could use that terminology, where you're showing an example find of that particular thing, be it a particular type of buckle, or maybe you've got a particular early issue or rarity coin, that kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly right. A lot of the photos I chose to show as multiple examples, and the goal was, because I mean, fittings alone would be a multi-volume set, right? Just from 1700 to the 20th
Mm,
century. So the hope here is that if you show various types in one handful, then you can show the various varieties of the various types of buckles and clothing clasps and things like that, so that people, readers will get a sense of what they might find. And
okay.
then, it's sort of like a jumping off point. Then they can do more research or know what they have in a general sense, and then they might be able to identify it more specifically later.
So metal detectorists, professional archaeologists, collectors, the wider public. It sounds for me like one of the appeals of your book is the close-up photography. Um, have you taken the same visual approach as more of a, like an academic study? Can you see the finer details when you look closely at these the artifacts?
Yeah, in all of my photos are really high quality photos, so it is possible to see a lot of the fine details. One thing I didn't do that was on the academic side, and I fought with this a little bit in the book because you think how academic is it going to be, how more user friendly or readable is it going to be, and
Mm,
I chose a couple of paths. One of the paths that I chose was to put all of the terms that were easily identifiable online in italics through the book. So in that regard, it kind of feels a little bit like a textbook because any reader can go and learn more that way. The
yeah.
second way is that because there's so many photos, um, a reader can just go through and decide, well, maybe I don't want to read all of that text and I just want to look at the photos and identify my finds. Well, the captions, some of the captions are pretty lengthy. They're like half-page captions on some of the photos, which really give additional information about the specific finds there, whereas the text itself might offer more
Mm.
general statements about time periods and histories of specific items and types. So the book can kind of function on multiple levels. If someone wants to see it as a visually stunning book, like a coffee table book, they can
Yeah.
have it there and thumb through and look at the pictures. If they'd like to take a more academic approach and read all of the text there, then that's there for them.
And you
But
can
one of
hop
the
off if you wanted to go and expand knowledge further,
Exactly,
yes.
and there's
Uh-huh.
bibliographies in there too. So it feels it's a little sprinkling of textbook in some ways, but I chose instead of putting a ruler, a scale down and doing more of a professional or archaeological style of photos. I chose to just have photos in my hands with various backgrounds or on old wood or brick or things like
Mm.
that that kind of show a rustic sort of a
More,
vibe with
yeah,
those
more
instead of
more
yeah.
tangible, like relatable,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of thing. Yeah, I totally get it. I really understand. So when you have an object, it's like the presentation of that object in its context is
yeah,
as interesting sometimes, not always, but sometimes quite interesting. You could have like, let's just take it like a North American approach for a second. You can have an old wooden shack with the ironwork, hand wrought, and all the rest of it, and you have your find with that as a backdrop. I can instantly go, okay, that buckle relates to someone who sat down there one day and did that thing.
yeah.
I got a question actually, and it's just to wheel back a bit to the Louisiana bit, former French colony, of course,
Hmm.
that they sold to the British, I understand. Or was it the
Yeah,
Americans?
and the Spanish, it went back and forth between the French and Spain a few times there.
Well, typically that. So that's a leading point. Thank you. You helped me out with my question actually, because when I was starting out looking at YouTubers, I was a little bit of a late entrant to that. But when I was looking at YouTubers who did metal detecting and stuff like that, I was more interested initially, at least, into the very end of like what I'd call the big American conventions. I'm talking the massive like shacks or barns with people with tables sending out a little bit like a gun convention, but you lay
Yeah.
out all your finds and you get all those box plates and you're like, oh geez, I haven't seen one like that before, that kind of thing. Those kind of conversations really really intrigued me. So my question, William, is beyond cataloging this amazing artifacts, what new insights into American history do you think emerge from doing something like this? And is there any specific discoveries that you've made personally or an immediate friend has made that has really surprised you, say, in Louisiana?
Well, a couple of things. First off, appreciating these civilian relics, these humble things, and identifying them accurately. No relic is completely tells its story unless it's identified correctly. It's just going to sit there and languish in the junk bin, or even worse, the trash can.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that a book like this is overdue. Now, with regard to insights that I've had, there are a lot of great insights there at the very end of the chapter. And I was careful with my editors to say, I don't want this book to be about all of the seldom found amazing treasure finds that one could make, because there's a lot of books like that, and I'm not knocking those books, but what sets this apart is that these are things that mere mortals are going to dig every day, because every everyone used these types of items in the past. And so I did put a little section at the end of the book with about a dozen finds where I go into those specific histories of some of the more glorious finds that I've had over the years, and the specific stories, amazing stories that those tell. But they're just greater versions of the stories that appear throughout the book that those individual, more humble relics can say.
Yeah, very interesting. So what I'm getting from that is that you're giving the reader an insight into civilian colonial history, and before, and to an extent after, through the lens of William, right?
Yeah.
Europe, and that's actually, again, it creates that very human perspective, and it adds to the drama, if you like, already of recording civilian objects, the buckles, the plates, the knives, the forks, the general coinage that would have been used. Coinage, of course, changed over time. You got Spanish reals and other French and etc. Barter economies, that things like that. I'm hearing from you today that rather than a one-off celebration, this is going to be part of something that will be embryonic over time, but it will take a long time. It's taken you 4 years, I believe you said, to get to the point of now. It's going to take a lot of time for you to collate the next volume. Everyone, this is Relics, A Guide to Identification by William, otherwise known as Buckleboy LA. What a wonderful, wonderful guest we have on our show. I really, really appreciate it. As per the cap you're wearing, keep digging.
Yeah,
thanks William.
Thank you.